Hey everybody, and thanks for checking out this video. I know it's going to be a little different than my normal fare, but I really just wanted to take kind of a moment and send out a personal message and offer some of my thoughts that I've been kicking around for the past week or so. So some of you may have met me in the past few years. Some of you may have never met me, and you only know my presence online. And I don't know that I've made it clear kind of as my life has grown and changed and as I've gotten older, kind of where I came from and everything that I've been involved with. So I wanted to kind of catch up on that first, and then I'll get into my thoughts and kind of what spawned my need to post and talk about this. And I'm going to try to keep this short. It's not going to be a huge, long thing. So I hope that you do stick with me, because I think there's going to be some important thoughts and kind of get into the core of who I am at the end. I grew up in a really small town, the town of Federalsburg, Maryland, which I think as of the time I was in high school had about 5,000 people in it, and that included kind of the outlying areas. I was always a town kid. Even though it was a rural area, I lived in town my entire life. Growing up, I was actually about 5 blocks from the elementary school, and in the fall and the spring, I would actually walk home from school. That's how close we were, and I guess that's how society was at that time. I was something that you might call a latchkey kid, which is, a kid who kind of let himself in at home. And I remember that there were times when we had different babysitters, my sister and I, who would pick us up and take us home from school. We got dropped off at some places before school, and then we would walk. They were also very nearby the school. But it was a very small town, and it was a very sheltered place to live. There were 2 traffic lights in the town I grew up in. One was downtown, kind of where the main 2 streets met, and the other was out by the bypass, where it was just a lot of traffic. These 2 main roadways, the one coming out of town that went to a bigger town nearby, and the one that came from another big town nearby and kind of swung past our town on the way into Delaware. They had a stoplight there. And if that light is now where the Food Lion is and the McDonald's and all of the important things that we're building around the town, that's where that is. That's the important intersection for the town. The other one's just downtown in the center of town. It literally could have been Mayberry. If you've seen the Andy Griffith Show, then you know kind of the town I grew up in. It had a brick-lined main street with shops on one side and banks on opposite corners, and it was called Super Soda when I grew up, but it was right there on the 4th corner, and it was a gas station and a place we could get snacks. And the next block over was the town hall, and across from that was the IGA, which was a small grocery store that was in the town. And kind of catacorner to that was Fox's Five and Dime, which had been there for a long time. The owners of Fox's, the Kaplans, actually lived across the street from me growing up. And right next to Fox's was another little strip mall, and then Dollar General, which was obviously a big deal. And up the hill slightly from that is the library, right next door to the church that I grew up in, the Park Lane Church of God. And then 2 blocks up from there is my house. So within a 4-block, 5-block radius was everything that I really needed as a kid. Walking down to Kaplan's to get some penny candy, or running to IGA for my mom, going down to Main Street, going to Super Soda when I was a little bit older. That's the town I grew up in. And growing up in a place like that, you learn things about the world that aren't true. I also grew up on the hill, and it's maybe not even something that they talk about anymore, but to grow up on the hill rather than at the bottom of the hill meant that we were a different kind of family. My parents made a big effort growing up. We moved around a little bit when I was smaller, and then I think it was in kindergarten or 1st grade when we got the house that they stayed in my entire time in school. From that point, kindergarten to 1st grade, through my graduation, same house, different bedroom. I did get an upgrade on a bedroom while we were there, but that was my house. Like, I still know the phone number. I had the address memorized, like everything about it. I could probably still walk around that house in the dark. That's the kind of place it was. And the first couple places we lived were further down the hill, or down at the bottom of the hill, or outside of town. And they weren't nearly as nice as that house. It was all stepping up. We were definitely middle class. My dad worked for the state, for the Veterans Administration. My mom was a school teacher. But all through their lives, they just worked to improve. And obviously my mom being a teacher, later a principal, now sitting on the Board of Education for the county, Education was a huge thing. It's a way for this way that she picked herself up. It's a way that we could pick ourselves up. My dad was a preacher. He had churches beforehand, and so that would make him a pastor. But now he just would preach whenever anybody needed someone to preach. He did funerals and weddings and worked a day job for the state. We are exceedingly middle class. But I never felt middle class. They always did the best that they could to provide us everything that we needed and most of what we wanted. And I learned lessons early on about being self-reliant. And, I remember if I really wanted something, then my parents would say, hey, all you got to do is do some extra chores. You got to, go do this or that. And then you'll make a little more allowance and then you can go buy the thing. So there was always a lesson involved. And, I don't want it to seem like it was perfect. It is what I have, and it's hard to compare it to something when I don't have anything else to compare. It was also sheltered in the fact that it was safe. My dad was police commissioner of the town. So maybe I got a little more favors than a lot of other kids. I remember a lot of things, like when I got my license, just getting pulled over all the time. And as soon as once they learned the car, they knew who it was. But even before then, just pulling up and having the cop come up to the window and be like, oh, all right, like, we know who you are. I'm going to get you. I'm going to put you through the whole paces. And then eventually they let me go with a warning. And of course, before I made it home, my dad knew that they had pulled me over. I had a party my senior year of high school, and after we graduated, and I was actually 18. So not a smart move on my part. Could have been a huge problem for, the school I'd already been accepted to and was planning on going to in the fall. But my parents were out of town. I had a party. We got busted with a lot of alcohol and probably some other things too. But the notebook that had everyone's name and information in it, including our blood alcohol content, mysteriously got lost. So no charges were filed. I am a beneficiary of institutional wealth. My parents built on the wealth of their parents that I've completely wasted, but has led to be the person that I am. I was at times in my past a highly educated lawyer, very well paid, and I could have put that forward to the next generation, which is just me at this point. I also benefited from a system who looked at me and said, hey, you're going to make something of yourself. As much as you don't want to, we're going to force it on you. And at every opportunity that you try to screw that up or you do something dumb and would have screwed it up otherwise, we're going to protect you. And how many times at college I got busted doing this or that dumb thing and just nothing ever came of it. It's one of those things that until you sit down and think about it, you don't realize how privileged you really are. And I wasn't privileged in so much as my parents bought me a car when I was 16. I bought their old car. They charged me and I paid them. I insured it myself. They charged me rent when I turned 18. They've charged me rent most of the times I've moved back, if not the first month I moved in, sometime thereafter. They never made it super easy because they wanted me to be strong and they wanted me to be a survivor. And I appreciate that. I didn't then. God knows I didn't then. But I do now. But being so sheltered and so protected and so safe, I think it's hard, and it was hard then. It's easier now for me to see that it wasn't just them, but it was everybody around them. It's having that safe neighborhood to live in and going to a decent school and living in a good school district and having cops call my dad instead of taking me in or writing me a ticket or finding a notebook that would probably lead to a court case that would have my scholarship taken away in the fall. All of these things I've experienced in my life. And I say that to say this. I love everyone in my family. I hope that I've been vocal about that. My parents have their flaws. We all have our flaws. If I was a parent, I would be busy trying to fix the things that I thought were wrong about my parents and screw my kid up in some other way. That's just the way that it works. But I love them, and I love my sister, and I miss my grandparents. They were all big influences on my life in one way or another, and I've always tried to take the good with the bad, cut away what I can, and take the good lessons. But far and away, all the uncles and aunts, my dad was one of 9 kids, my mom was one of 4. There's a lot of kids, a lot of uncles and aunts, there's a lot of cousins. I have a sister, I have a half-brother, I had a half-sister, grandparents, everybody. All of them have taken into account. My nephew is everything to me. And seeing my sister become the person that I knew that she could be, just filling in the potential and being a fantastic mom to that little boy just makes me happier than anything in this world. And I came to the realization in the past week that when I look at her, I see a lifetime of memories that we've had together, chasing each other around the house, her dumping all of my fresh laundry out on the front lawn, her chasing me around with a knife at one point, me locking her out of the house all day, her sitting in the pool all summer while I went to work. There's a lot of stuff. We have a lot of baggage, but as adults, we've come way closer than we ever were as kids. And I see all of that, and I see her being a mom, and I know that she is doing everything she can for her son. And I look at him, and I see a little me in all the best and worst ways. I see a little her in all the best and worst ways. I see bits of my parents. I see bits of his dad. He is just an amalgamation, and he's just putty, just waiting to be formed, forming himself, but we're forming him too into something that is going to be such a unique and special person. And then I realize that when he goes out in the world, they're not going to see that. They're not going to see the tiny little bundle that I was unbelievably excited to meet. They are not going to see the 2 going on 3-year-old that every week that passes I regret that I haven't FaceTimed him yet again this week. The one that I worry is going to forget who I am and what my voice is. They're not going to see that. They're going to see, likely, a very tall, very strong, very intelligent black man in America. And that thought terrifies me. My nephew is mixed, and the one thing that I have learned through my life is that it doesn't matter how fair-skinned he might be, how mixed he is going to be a black man to everyone who sees him. And his dad is tall, and his dad is broad-shouldered, and our family is all relatively tall and broad-shouldered. And he is going to be a big dude. He's also going to be very smart. And that is a dangerous combination in this country. And I am scared for what will happen when he becomes that man that I know he's going to become. Now, my sister, she's always thought that I've been crazy with all of my leftist nonsense. I'll tell you, politically, I started out very far on the right. I probably would have voted for Bush in 2000. Growing up in a small town in a rural area, I was very, very much conservative. But then I went to college, and over the course of just a few months, probably senior year into college, I experienced this huge swing to the left where I just didn't understand conservative politics anymore. It didn't make sense. Once I got outside of that bubble of the Eastern Shore of Maryland, I saw the world for the first time, and my eyes were opened. And I swung way left for a while, and then came back to the middle for a while, and then went back far to the left. But in 2003, I protested the Iraq War before it started. And I got myself arrested protesting back then. And I spent the 2000s, the aughts, protesting and getting in the face of cops in cities up and down the eastern seaboard. I was able to do that because I look like this. I'd been told my whole life that no matter what I do, the cops are not going to hurt someone who looks like me. And during the Occupy movement, I participated in Baltimore, where I was living at the time, and I was a vocal proponent of that movement, and I got vocal with the police, and I was able to do that because I look like this. And then I went to law school. Actually, I was in law school at the time. I got my law degree, and that didn't help because now I look like this, and I know my rights, and I know their limitations, and I turned into the worst kind of person if you're a conservative. I am an educated leftist who understands their rights, understands the dynamics of the world, and is willing to go out and protest and probably go to the extreme. With Michael Brown's murder in 2014 and Freddie Gray's murder in 2015 and a too long list of hashtags and names that we've had since then. I have gone out, I've been out on the street, I have been vocal, I've been on social media, I've been pushing that message of equality and reform and change. And as I've gotten older, the old adage is that liberals have a huge heart and no brain, and conservatives have a huge brain and no heart, and that as you're young, you go from the heart to the brain, and you'll move from left to right. And I've found that the older I've gotten, the further left I got, not the closer to the right, not the more conservative. I get more and more upset. And 3 years ago, with my nephew being born, I think it subconsciously moved me even further to the left, because I recognized I don't want kids. I don't want to leave that kind of legacy in the world. But now that legacy is going to be there. And I need to know that the country and the world that I'm leaving him is going to be something he deserves. And I think that pushed me to the left. And I think that I have, in a sense, always recognized my own privilege, even if I didn't vocalize it as privilege. But in 2015, starting with Freddie Gray, I started doing what I called weaponizing that privilege. I will stay quiet and start listening, and I will march in front. So if it makes those cops think twice about firing tear gas or pepper spray because my face is the one that they're looking at, then that's what we should do. And that's what I did. And now I'm 36. And now the insurgency that I've always wanted is underway. And I'm a beaten and broken man. I got a knee that needs rehab. I got to get 8 hours of sleep or else I'm worthless the next day. And I'm in a management position at my job that requires a lot of me, even more than when I was a lawyer. And I don't know. I think most of this is coming out of a frustration. I don't know what more to do. I don't know what more. I'm arguing with people every single day. I'm arguing with white people about not understanding their privilege. I'm arguing with them about Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. Like, these are things that should be well settled. And I don't understand the mindset of people. And it's frustrating and it hurts me. It hurts me because I don't care about my own life. I have been trying to throw away my own life for the better part of 20 years now. My life means nothing. It is about the world that we leave behind. It's about the country that we're going to leave behind for other people. And now it's not just other people. It is him. It is Maxon, my nephew. And when you say there is no white privilege, you are saying you are okay with him dying. When you say there is no systematic racism, you are saying you are okay with him being murdered by the police. Because they will not care that this face is his uncle. They will not care what his mother looks like. They will care that to them, he is a tall, scary black man. And more than likely, if I have my way, he will be an educated, leftist, reformist black man. He will be out leading those marches and putting himself in danger, trying to do for his kids what I have been trying to do for the last 20 years, even though he wasn't there for him. And when you say that it's going too far, all of this is enough, why don't we just wait? What I hear is his life does not matter. That you are fine with 10, 15, or 20 years from now, some racist cop putting their knee on his neck or putting him in a chokehold. I never want to have to imagine him screaming out for his mother, my sister. I never want to hear him calling out saying he can't breathe. I never want him to be put in a position where he is anything more than me or less than me. I want those in authority to look at his face and see what they see when they see my face. Didn't want it to get super political. My point is, I have not found a way to get this sentiment across. That when you say these things, what you are telling me is you don't care that he dies. And you don't care that he dies at the hands of the state that is meant to protect him. This channel hasn't been the place where I have kind of put these ideas out. I try to be super happy and super fun and super friendly. I have other places where the other darker side of my personality lives. The super leftist, the reformer, the revolutionary. I have that. And it lives somewhere else on the internet. And I think that started back when I was an attorney because I was a little too vocal, and some cops threatened me in some roundabout ways, and they really tried to step in and ruin my life in every way possible, calling my boss, calling the bar, calling other attorneys, calling the prosecutor's office in every county that I work in, just doing everything that they could to stomp on me metaphorically, because again, I look like this, and they wouldn't do it physically. So at that point, I separated out, and I kept all of my political and reformist and revolutionary stuff in one place under a pseudonym with all of that going on. And I kept me, the family-friendly, center-of-the-road guy, in a different place. And that was a mistake. I am ashamed of myself for doing that. Because the reality is I am who I am. And the person who you come to watch, the person who you check out the videos, the reviews, or Rob Explains Everything and all of that, I am a person who looks like this, who is afraid that 15 years from now, someone who also looks like this is going to murder the person who is the most important one in my life. So I think it's time for those two sides to do a little bit of blending, to come together in a little bit of symbiosis, because being quiet is not an option. Not that I ever was, but I have been here. And that is a mistake. Silence is consent. Change is necessary, and we all need to speak up. Our voices need to be heard. So while I am not a voter, because I don't believe voting does anything, if you are, I think you should vote. And I think you should vote for people who are going to bring change. And we absolutely need to reform the police department. And if they won't reform, we need to defund them. And we need to abolish them and find an alternative that will protect not only people who look like me, but people who look like Maxim. And I started to get into this a few minutes ago, but my sister always used to make fun of me for being such a leftist. And now she has a black son. And how did that change her personality? Well, I let her know that this is what I was thinking. I was so terrified that the world is going to see this scary thug in the cherub cheeks of the boy that means so much to me. And she said, I'm hopeful that by the time he's an adult, there will have already been a revolution that we have lived through and things will change. I think that this is like a boiling pot that started with Trayvon Martin. I mean, I would argue it would be Michael Brown, and each time it gets bigger and bigger, change is coming soon. This isn't the civil rights movement anymore. The civility will be gone, and it will be the human rights movement at all costs. So you done fucked up. You turned a apolitical, center of the road, active voter, active citizen, but someone who is not going to go out and march, to someone who is calling for a revolution and a human rights movement and change at all cost. And I say you fucked up, but the reality is it's my dream come true. Because she's right. I got about 10 years. I have 10 years to make this country and this world a place that he deserves to live in, and a place that I can be assured that whether I am living 1 mile down the road or 3,000 miles across the country, I don't have to worry about him. And I will do that by any means necessary. And if you come to me with the same tired, all lives matter, what about black on black violence, not all cops are bad, any of those same tired arguments, be prepared. Because I am no longer coming in as a nice, friendly public face. I'm coming in, guns blazing, full-on revolutionary. Because I'm sick and tired of it, and I'm not going to let you be an accomplice to the death of my nephew. And if that means that I lose subscribers, that means that I lose followers, or my Instagram numbers go down, or my Facebook numbers go down, or any of that, well, so be it. Because there are some things that are just more important. And I've been trying to have my cake and eat it too. And that's just not how it works. You don't get systematic change through partial reforms. And I talk about it in the Captive State review just a little bit about collaborators being active or inactive. And I feel like I'm an inactive collaborator. And I never want to feel like that again. I will be a dissident from this day forward. All gas, no brakes, change now, or else. So anyway, for all of you that made it through this, thank you. I'm sorry that I got a little worked up. I'm sorry if this seems like an angry white guy just talking about things that he doesn't know anything about. Maybe that's true. I'm also going to make an effort over the next few weeks and months and years to do a lot more listening and a lot less talking and supporting being an ally, being a real ally, being the best ally that I can be. And I hope that you stick around for it. I hope you're along for the ride. We're going to get back to the fun stuff. We're going to get back to the parodies and the reviews and all that. But there's also going to be other things like this along the way. We're going to do some Rob Explains episodes about systematic racism and Jim Crow and a bunch of things that people need to educate themselves about when the looting starts, the shooting starts, and what's the historical significance of that, about why sheriffs have unchecked power because they come from slave patrols. We're going to get into the nitty gritty. We're going to get into the dirty details. And I'm going to try to do it in a way that is both entertaining but also educational. And I'm going to hope that whenever the day comes, 10 or 15 years from now, and Maxon is looking for a little insight into who I was or who I am or where he should be, that he's proud of what he finds here. So thank you guys for hanging out. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.